to another edition of Chuck's Corner. Chuck's Corner. I'm trying. I'm trying out new things here.
I love the theme song.
So I am here with Chuck Bishop, who is the head of Wells Fargo Diverse Segments, and we are talking all things home ownership, home buying, everything home. Welcome home. Can we say that?
I like that,
You
Vic.
like that?
I do.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to have to start jotting down all.
She's going to become a jingle writer pretty soon.
Yes.
A new career starting.
All right. So, there are a lot of myths floating around when it comes to buying a home. We hear it all the time. I've heard things, especially, when I was a first-time home buyer. But whether you're a first-time home buyer or you need a refresher on home buying facts and you want to get the facts, some people recommend to continue renting to save money for a down payment and wait out, the interest rates. Which I thought about doing at one point, like, can I wait till it goes down a little bit more? Should I wait till it goes down? What do you do at this point?
So let's start with the elephant in the room, so to speak, and that's the myths around home buying. I've been in this business, I won't tell you how long, it's a long time, and the myths have been the same. And the reality is myths are perception until the truth comes out. It's like a rumor. When you find out the truth, no longer is it sexy to talk about. It kind of goes away. Mm-hmm. So the myth around home buying typically is around down payment and credit. And the meaningful way to dispel that is to understand the truth. And you only get that through education. And we talked a little bit about that in our last session, but education is absolutely critical to understanding the do's and don'ts and the reality of buying a home. The biggest myth likely is that 20% down payment myth that everybody talks about, when that absolutely is not true. You can buy homes with as little as 3% down.
Let them know that again.
Yeah, absolutely. You can buy a home with as little as 3% down. And in some of those programs, that 3% can be a gift. Yeah. So the myth likely started from the requirement of mortgage insurance, which is required if you put less than 20% down. And mortgage insurance is one of those things that doesn't protect you as a consumer, it protects the lender. It's when you have minimum down payment, it's an insurance program to protect against default. So that's likely where the myth got started. But again, myths are impediments to our path to home ownership. So unless you find the truth out, it will continue to be something that stops you from achieving your dream.
And the key thing here is just doing your research and really seeking out the education behind home buying so that you won't get caught up in a lot of these myths. So
absolutely. And there's a lot of resources out there.
There are so many resources. We're going to give them some resources because you have so many to share, as you did with our last segment. Now, we're talking about credit scores now. This is a big one, all right? Do I need a perfect credit score to buy a home? And do you need more credit history? Because a lot of people kind of get that mixed up, like, oh my gosh, I have this on my credit. I'm not going to be able to even qualify for a home, but kind of talk about that credit score situation.
Yeah, credit's another one of those things that typically trips up consumers with respect to the myths about what I need. It's often thought that you need perfect credit to buy a home, or even, air quotes here, good credit. But what does that really mean? What is good credit? So first, understand what your credit is. Then do your research to understand what programs you're eligible for. And that's back to the education piece. Working with a nonprofit housing counselor can help you understand where you are in your home buying journey with respect to your credit preparedness. So there are programs that go as low as 580 that are out there. Now, what does 580 mean? Does that mean you have to come in with a bigger down payment, or does that mean you pay a higher rate because you may be a bit more risky on the credit spectrum? If you have a higher credit score, other programs become available to you. So there is a path to home ownership. I just tell you listeners that don't rush into it and don't think that you have to do it today. Because you have 580, you might qualify. Spend the 60, 90 days doing some work and get your credit to a 620. Another program will be available to you. More options will be available to you. And all these options will ultimately make the home more affordable. It just takes the discipline about having a plan and doing the work.
And that process of being patient and waiting, what can people do within that time to prepare?
Absolutely. So let me give you a couple of resources that will help you get started. HUD, which is the a federal agency for housing and urban development. They have a home buying website. It's called Buying a Home. It's on the HUD website, and that is a federal website that has tools. You can go to that site and find HUD-approved counselors. And again, these counselors don't have skin in the game and aren't getting paid for your transaction. They are objective and non-biased to help you find down payment assistance programs and other things. You can go to Wells Fargo, wellsfargo.com/mortgage education, and find the resources that will help you understand down payment requirements. You can look at your credit score. You can look at the various programs that are out there. And then, again, there are many local entities, whether it be through the National Federation of Credit Counselors or other entities that are out there that will help you. Again, there are resources in your community, and these resources can also connect you to other options besides the credit assistance, but down payment assistance, other things. And again, it's a journey. Take your time, be planful, and don't just wake up tomorrow and say, I want to buy a home and call a realtor. No offense to my realtor friends, I love you, but I'm sure you would want the buyer to be more prepared and more ready to buy a home, because ultimately a realtor wants a customer that they feel is going to be qualified and ready to go.
And you want to have realistic expectations too, because it's not just like, oh, I want to buy a home tomorrow, and then you have not done the work, the preparation, the education. You don't even know the process. So it is really good to kind of seek that out first.
100%. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about making more money. We all want to make more money, but what about making more money to qualify for a mortgage?
I tell people when you're buying a home, it's like your physical exam. You really have to disclose everything. Don't hide anything. So like you don't hide anything from your doctor, don't hide anything from your mortgage professional or your housing counselor. If you've got a variety of income, maybe it's a part-time job, maybe it's seasonal. It could be child support or alimony. There are things you often don't think about that will help you qualify. So these things, that other income as we're talking about, are things that we often don't think about as being pertinent to the transaction, but they are. If you work overtime on a regular basis, if you've got a side gig, this whole e-economy, this digital economy that we all have, whether it be through Uber or selling something on Amazon, those things, if you've got a record of them, they can help you qualify for a home. So don't think that there's anything that's not important today. And just like when we talked about credit earlier, non-traditional credit is becoming a really important factor. So using those things that you traditionally don't think about as being a tool or an asset, they actually are in this case for a mortgage.
Yeah. And, when we talk about a mortgage and the process of this, is this process a long, complicated process? A lot of people can get overwhelmed when they think about qualifying for a mortgage. How much am I going to pay? When am I going to get qualified? Does this pre-qualification mean that I have it? Like I'm going to just get, talk about that process.
The mortgage process has evolved, thankfully. It was a rather complicated process, but it is still complex.
Yeah.
So I don't want people to think that it's an easy process. It is complex, and I will tell you, again, be patient, have a plan. Understand the difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval. A pre-qualification not mean much. That just means someone looked at your income and your assets and said, based on what I see, here's what you qualify for. A pre-approval is when we actually pull your credit also. And now we say, we've looked at your income, we've looked at your assets, we've looked at your credit, and now the only thing that's holding you back from moving into the home is let's look at the property. Let's do an appraisal and get clear title. So again, there's a difference between pre-approval and pre-qualification, but this process is a process. It is one that has several steps for compliance reasons. There process in place to protect you as a consumer and to protect us as a lender. And you can start this early, though. Again, back to the preparation with your plan, working with the housing counselor. But understand, it's about 30 to 45 days, depending on your purchase contract. Yeah. But if you also think you spend time getting pre-approved or pre-qualified before that 35 or 40 days, we're now at a 90, 120-day period. So it's, again, we're at 4 months and we haven't even talked about the house yet. Right. So it's not something, again, you're going to decide to do today and make happen. But be prepared for this to be 3 or 4 months long. Find your money first, though. Find your money before you find the house. I'm going to say that a million times if we talk a million times, because the customer who is pre-approved and has found their money is much more likely to win that contract because there's a shortage of housing in our country, a significant shortage, which means sellers want to make sure that the contracts they get have a legitimate chance of going through. So they don't want to take their property off the market for a contract that might not get approved at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So if you're pre-qualified, you stand a much better chance of getting through versus somebody who's not.
Now, one of the big topics that people want to weigh in on when you are looking for a home, renting versus buying. Well, why would you want to? You should do. Let's talk about renting versus buying. Is it less expensive to rent? This is very interesting because a lot of people are like, well, I would just rather stay in an apartment and do it. But every time I think about that, I'm like, but you could be paying that same amount towards your mortgage, something that you own. But let's talk about it.
Sure. So the rent versus buy concept and discussion is one that will never go away.
Right.
And there's no one right answer, honestly. As a lender, I would love to tell you buying makes sense for everybody, but it doesn't. Buying doesn't make sense for everybody, and it does make sense for a lot of people. So let's understand a couple things. Since 2020, we've seen rents in this country go up about 25, 26%. Okay, that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
And that's only in the last 4 years. We also are seeing home prices go up. Again, I said earlier there was a shortage of housing, so we've seen home prices go up. So you kind of seeing rising cost of living regardless of where you are. Here's the big difference, though. When I buy a home, I've got more stability in that price versus rent. Because when I buy a home and I get a fixed rate mortgage, my mortgage payment is not going to change. My taxes could go up some, my homeowner's insurance could go up some, but my mortgage payment will not. So you've got much more stability and predictability with that payment versus a landlord where you may have to deal with his escalating costs, his or her escalating costs, or you may have to move. Also understand there are a variety of rentals. There are multifamily apartments. I got to tell you, I was with my niece last week and took her to look at apartments here in the DMV.
Yeah.
One bedroom apartment, $1,900 plus $200 for amenities. So I'm thinking, you're a college graduate, your first year teaching in a school system, and you're going to look at $2,100 in rental expenses.
Yeah.
You know
That
you
right
can buy
there.
a home for $2,100, and again, that's a one bedroom apartment that she's getting. So again, it's not right for her to buy right now. I'd ask people to think about a couple things. We've got institutional investors buying blocks of affordable houses today, turning them into rentals. So those properties aren't available. Maybe don't rent the sexiest apartment out there. Do something a little less expensive. That's $300 or $400 less. $400 less means $5,000 in savings at the end of year one. You've got your down payment now, or you're close to the way there. So think about what you have to have versus what you want to have.
That's right.
Think about what you need. And I'll share something personal with you. My mother never owned a home. I didn't grow up in a house until I bought one as a professional. There was an article that Essence picked up on my family. My mother spent almost $1 million in rent.
Wow.
Almost $1 million in her lifetime. We've got nothing to show for that. Our family has no legacy wealth, none. She could have bought that house, the condo she rented for the last 42 years of her life. She could have bought it for $75,000 then. So doing the math, not only does she pay $1 million in rent, she and her estate don't have probably $225,000 of equity that she should have. Now, why didn't she buy? Didn't know. I didn't know. I wasn't a seasoned professional at the time when she was looking to buy.
Right.
She didn't want to own. She didn't want to take care of a home. She could have bought a condo. But again, not knowing and not moving forward with those opportunities just means that there's nothing to pass to her grandchildren because it's somebody else is enjoying that. Some landlord has that $1 million of money that she spent, and their kids are enjoying it.
And there are so many stories like this. And I think I shared before how my grandmother, our family home, they were renting for so long until the landlord passed.
Yeah.
And then the children had to make the decision like, okay, are we going to sell the house to them or not? But I didn't know all this time that they had been renting the house. And fortunately, I grew up in living in apartments for most of my life, but seeing my mother go through HPAP and go through different programs to get her first house really motivated me to want to be a homeowner. So it does make a difference to actually see that process and to know a little bit like, okay, I need to own.
Yeah.
At least for me, that was me. So, yeah.
HPAP brings back memories. When I first got in the mortgage business, the first loan I did was for the Home Purchase Assistance Program in D.C.
Yeah.
And that young lady was so happy because she didn't think she was going to own a home. And I think she bought me birthday cards for the next 20 years.
I know.
She was elated. It was amazing. It was the best feeling ever also to help her.
Well, speaking of helping first-time home buyers, let's talk about the options, the grants that are in the markets now.
Sure. At Wells, we do a lot to affect the housing ecosystem because the ecosystem is more than just kind of the homeowner. At the end of the day, it's a bigger process. So, for instance, we're one of the nation's largest financiers of multifamily housing. So that's providing loans to builders building apartments. So, home buying journey typically starts with successful renters. Got to have desirable, affordable housing for people to rent. So we do a huge amount of financing in that space. We also support diverse developers. One of the things we want to make sure is having affordable housing for Black and Latino buyers in Black and Latino neighborhoods. And we put $40 million of grants out there for diverse developers to do just that, develop properties in Black and Latino neighborhoods. We've put another $60 million in Worth, which is wealth opportunities restored through home ownership. That's a
Okay,
mouthful. That's a
say.
mouthful, but I got it down. So that $60 million really was like a neighborhood competition where municipalities competed for money that they said they needed. Some are using it for down payment assistance. Some are using it for affordable housing development. Some are using it for counseling services. So, again, neighborhoods competing and coming to Wells saying, I've got a plan to improve the opportunity for low-income and diverse customers in my communities, and here it is. And Wells has awarded them grants. And then you may have seen press releases from 2022 where we put $150 million aside for African-American customers who had sat on the sidelines during the height of the refinance boom. That's one of the things we often don't talk about in the home ownership journey is sustainability and staying in the home.
Yes.
As we talked earlier, that home buying search is a 90, 120-day window of getting myself ready and then getting the contract and buying a house.
That's right.
But that home ownership period is 30, 40, 50 years long potentially. So, sustainability means refinancing when it's right, using cash out when you need to. But so many African-American customers, for whatever reason, did not refinance when rates were really low. So we refinanced them with a special offer, driving their rates to historic lows. And we helped over 6,000 families improve their financial position. So now they have a savings that they would not have had but for that. And now we're putting money out in the Home Buyer Access Grant, $10,000 down payment assistance in 8 markets across the country. In 16 markets, we've got a closing cost assistance for $5,000 called the Dream Plan Home Closing Cost Program. And we also have a Dream Plan Home Mortgage, which is a conventional loan at 3% down at rates that are more competitive than government rates. So, again, we're doing what we can to try to drive down the cost of affordability because we can't really control the home prices, but we can try to affect the payment in a positive way. So those are some of the things that we're doing out there. And again, wellsfargo.com/mortgage education
I was about to
find out more about that.
say that.
Absolutely.
Give it to them one more time.
It's wellsfargo.com/mortgage education. And for those of you who want to talk to somebody, we also have a toll-free number, 1-866-448-0573.
That's right. Because there are so many resources for you. And I'm glad that you brought up the refinance because I definitely took advantage of that time and it made a world of difference. And so, like you said, to have the education and to learn the sustainability of not just getting the process and getting through the process and getting into the home, but so many things happen once you're a homeowner that you may not be prepared for. But once you go through it, you know how to move forward.
Yeah, you're right.
So
You're right.
it is well worth it.
And
It's
Vic,
well worth it.
we talked about the financial benefits, and as you talk about, there's some unforeseen surprises as being a homeowner that you got to be prepared for. But homeownership also has this social benefit. It provides a sense of accomplishment, a sense of personal growth. To have children grow up in their own home, paint the walls whatever color they want to, put shrubs wherever they want to, put flowers in the window because they want to.
And create those family traditions as well.
Absolutely. And quite honestly, there have been several studies that show that children growing up in homes of their own typically do better in school, have less childhood disease, less teen pregnancy, higher graduation rates. There are a bunch of social and household benefits from growing up in a home. So, we're here to help. We want to be part of help, but we got to start the conversation. So, for all the listeners out there who are even thinking about it, just raise your hand. Reach out to the website, call the phone number. We're here to help. And quite honestly, we don't push you into anything you're not ready for. And I would tell any consumer listening, if you're uncomfortable with it, don't move forward. Tell your professional, I don't know if I want that payment, or I'm not sure I want that.
Speak
that
up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right then and there.
Because there are some people who will push you into what they think you can afford versus what you know you can afford. So let's be realistic and come to the table with realistic expectations and realistic desires. And the homeownership journey, again, complex but manageable if you have a plan.
And I'm so glad that you give us that blueprint and that people can reach out, and it is a safe space to ask questions, to get the information and the resources. Chuck Bishop, we have to keep the conversation going. Okay, there are so many other things that we have to talk about when it comes to home buying and home ownership, and I can't wait to get into it.
I'm looking forward to it, Vic. This is for me. It's refreshing. It's invigorating. It's what I love to do.
Yeah.
And hopefully this is resonating with the listeners.
Of course it is. Give that website one more time.
Absolutely. WellsFargo.com/mortgage education.
I'm Vic Jagger. This has been another edition of Chuck's Corner. Dun.